All right, let's dive in. We're talking about one of the toughest, most famous stories out there, the binding of Isaac. You know the one. On the surface, it's just this stark, almost brutal story about faith being tested to its absolute limit. But what if that's not the whole picture? What if there's way more going on than what we read on the page?
Yeah, that's really the question, isn't it? The biblical text tells us what happened, sure, but it leaves all the really big questions, well, unanswered. The why? To really get to the heart of it, we need a guide. Someone who can read between the lines, Someone who can show us the hidden motives, the conversations that are happening just under the surface.
And that guide? Well, for us, it's the legendary medieval commentator Rashi. Now, Rashi doesn't just read the text. He kind of interrogates it. He digs into every single word to find these incredible layers of meaning. So let's see how Rashi takes this story and turns it from just a test of faith into this deep psychological and spiritual drama.
Okay, so right from the very first verse, Rashi drops this bombshell. He gives us the why. The Bible just says God put Abraham to the test. Simple enough. But Rashi, he pulls back the curtain and shows us the backstage drama. He asks, was it maybe Satan whispering in God's ear, saying, hey, Abraham's faith, it's all for show? Or, and this is fascinating, was it a rivalry between brothers? Ishmael bragging about a circumcision and Isaac firing back with this incredible claim that he'd be willing to sacrifice his entire life. All of a sudden, this isn't just some random command. It's a response to a huge cosmic challenge.
And this is where you see Rashi's genius. He zooms in on a single word. God calls out, Abraham, and Abraham replies, Hineni. It just means, here I am. But for Rashi, it's not like saying, yeah, or what's up? No. This is the answer of someone who is completely pious, totally humble, and just ready for whatever's coming. The test hasn't even started, and we already know everything we need to know about Abraham's character.
All right, now for the command itself. This is the part that it's shocking, right? A father is told to sacrifice his own son. But Rashi shows us that even in this absolutely terrifying moment, there are these hidden layers of meaning, this incredible psychological tension.
Check out the language here, because it's wild. God doesn't just command, he requests. Rashi points out this little Hebrew word, na, which basically means please or I beg of you. Why on earth would God beg? Rashi's take is that God is saying, Abraham, I need you to stand firm on this one. Show everyone that all your previous trials were for real. It's not just a test, it's almost like an invitation to be a partner in this whole thing.
And here's another thing. The command doesn't just drop all at once. God doesn't come out and say, take Isaac. No, he builds up to it, word by agonizing word. And according to Rashi, that's completely on purpose. So Rashi basically reconstructs this conversation that's happening between the lines. Imagine this. God says, take your son. Abraham replies, but I have two sons. God says, your only son. And Abraham comes back with, well, each one is the only son to his mother. God tries again. The one whom you love. Abraham says, I love them both. It's this heartbreaking back and forth until finally God is just cornered. He has to say the name, Isaac. Rashi turns a simple command into this moment of unbearable, rising tension.
So you gotta ask, right? Why? Why this slow, torturous reveal? Why not just get straight to the point?
Well, Rashi's explanation is just brilliant. It's like a glimpse into divine psychology. He says God did it this way for a few reasons. First, so Abraham wouldn't be completely overwhelmed. Second, to make the fulfillment of the command that much more precious. And third, to reward him for his obedience to every single one of those agonizing words. So you see, the conversation wasn't just the lead-up to the test. The conversation was the test.
Okay, so the command's been given. Now let's look at the response. Abraham doesn't argue, he doesn't hesitate, he acts immediately. And Rashi shows us how every single thing he does next is just packed with meaning.
First, he gets up early in the morning. Rashi says this shows how eager he was, how on it he was. Then, he saddles his own donkey. He doesn't have a servant do it. Why? Rashi has this amazing line. Love disregards the rule of one's high station. In other words, Abraham's love for God was so powerful, so all-consuming, that things like status and privilege just melted away. He was all in, doing everything himself.
Then there's this line he says to his servants. We will worship and we will return to you. Plural, we will return. Now you could just read that as him telling a little white lie to keep them calm. But Rashi sees something way deeper. He sees it as a prophecy. Abraham has no idea how it's going to happen, but on some gut level, he just knows that they'll both be coming back.
He's speaking their survival into existence without even realizing it. And then you get the question that just stops your heart. Isaac, in all his innocence, asks it. He's looking around, he sees the fire, he sees the wood, but he points out that the main ingredient is missing. Where's the sheep? The tension in that moment is just, wow. I mean, what do you even say to that?
Abraham's response is a masterclass in double meaning. Rashi shows us what's really going on. On the surface, he's saying, don't worry, son, God will provide the sheep. But there's a hidden message there. What he's also saying is, and if God doesn't provide a sheep, then you are the offering, my son. It's this incredibly gentle but also chilling way of preparing Isaac for the truth.
And this leads to what might be one of Rashi's most powerful insights in this whole story. The text repeats this phrase, and the two of them walked on together. Why say it twice? Rashi explains that the first time they walked together, only Abraham knew what was about to happen. But after that conversation, Isaac gets it. He understands. So the second time the text says they walk together, it's because they are now walking with the same ready heart. Isaac is no longer just a kid being led along, he's a willing participant, right there with his father.
So they get to the spot. The altar's built. The wood is in place. We're at the absolute climax of the story. And even here, in this moment of pure terror, Rashi finds these surprising little pockets of intimacy and clarity.
Okay, picture this. Abraham raises the knife, and an angel's voice calls out, Abraham, Abraham. He says the name twice. Why? Rashi explains that repeating a name like that is an expression of deep affection, of love. So think about that. At the most terrifying, heart-stopping second imaginable, what comes from heaven isn't just an order to stop, it's an expression of immense love.
And here's another really crucial point Rashi makes. He says, let's rewind to the original command. God said, bring him up as an offering. He never actually said, slay him. The point was never for Isaac to die. The entire test was about Abraham's willingness to go through with it. The second he proved he was ready, test complete. The goal was achieved.
And that's when the ram shows up. But this isn't just some random sheep that wandered by. Oh no. Rashi says this specific ram was created for this exact purpose, way back at the beginning of time. And get this for a final twist. Satan himself was trying to tangle the ram up in the bushes, one last-ditch effort to mess things up for Abraham. This cosmic battle was going on right down to the final second.
So, the test is over. Abraham and Isaac are safe. But the story's impact, it's really just getting started. Rashi shows us how this one event, on this one mountain, forged a legacy that's going to ripple through all of history.
Abraham calls the place Adonai Yirah, which means God will see. And Rashi just runs with this, connecting all the dots. He points out that the mountain's name, Moriah, is tied to the Hebrew word for instruction, because this is where the future temple will stand. It's also tied to myrrh, which was used as incense in the temple. And most importantly, it becomes the place where God will forever see the symbolic ashes of Isaac as an atonement for future generations. It's like this one spot on a map becomes the central point for everything that comes after.
So they get this huge blessing for both of them, and then Rashi gives us this one final, beautiful peek into Abraham's head. Imagine them walking down the mountain. Abraham is probably thinking, my son almost died today, and he doesn't have any kids. I need to find him a wife. And right then, at that exact moment, word arrives that Rebekah, his future wife, has just been born. Rashi connects Abraham's private thought to this perfectly timed news, showing us that this isn't a world of coincidences. It's all deeply, meaningfully connected.
So where does that leave us? You know, the basic story of the binding of Isaac is this really intense, difficult story about faith, about obedience. But when you read it with Rashi, the whole thing gets reframed. He shows you the love hidden in God's plea, the love in Abraham's urgency, the love in Isaac's willing steps, and the love in that final call from heaven to stop. He takes a story that feels like it's about fear and transforms it into a story about relationship. And it leaves you with a much bigger question. Not just, what does it mean to have faith, but maybe, what does it mean to have a love so powerful it can actually change the world?